Hey everybody, welcome back. Now in this tutorial, we will learn how to create a service so we can save data from our to-do app into a database. Now Ionic does a very good job of providing an SQL database which you can use with your app. To start with our service, we will first create a folder called data. Now this folder should be inside the pages folder. We will now create a JavaScript file and name it service.js. Now let's start coding our service. The first thing we will want to do is to import the Ionic storage and SQL storage components from Ionic/Ionic. We also would want to import a special component which is called injectable from Angular 2.0. What this does is it enables us to use this class anywhere in our app. So we will say Angular 2 core. Next thing we're gonna do is use a decorator which says injectable, and we will start coding our class. Now we would want to use the export keyword because we want to use this class in other places. Now let's name our class to-do service and start. Now we would want to have a constructor in our class, and inside the constructor we would want to instantiate the storage library that we had imported from Ionic as new storage, and we would want to pass in the type of storage that we want, which is the SQL storage which we imported, and a name for our storage database. So let's name it to-do storage. We also would want to instantiate a variable called data. So we would do so as this.data equals to null. And when our app should start up, we should load up whatever is in the database so the user can see all the tasks that he had previously created. To do so, we will call the get method on our SQL storage like this.storage.get. We would pass in the name of the storage, which is to-do storage. And now this returns a jQuery promise. So we would get back the variable which comes back from the promise as to-do, and then using the JavaScript ECMA6 literal, we can set that to this.data, and now this comes back as a JSON, so we want to parse it so we can get it as an array, to-dos. Next, we will create all the methods which we would need to perform basic CRUD operations on our database. So now let's create a getData method. GetData. All this would do is return our storage. So this.storage.get to-do storage. What this will do is go to our database and pull up everything under to-do storage and return it as a promise. The next thing we're gonna do is add a save item method so we can save items to our database. To do so, we would first need to check if there is any data existing in our database or not. So if there is nothing in the database, we will want to create a new data array. This.data equals to just create an array from the item that we have received, and then we can use the keyword let and assign this to new data as JSON.stringify, because we can only save JSON strings in our database. And then this.storage.set the name of our storage, to-do storage, and then the variable that we want to replace this by. So since our database is a key value pair, to-do storage is the key and new data is the value. So every time we would want to save anything, we would want to save it into the same key, to-do storage. In the else condition, if there is existing data, all we want to do is to add to it. So this dot data dot push and then item, and then again the same thing, let new data equals to json.stringify this dot data, and then push it to the storage, to do storage, and then use new data. Okay, so the next method that we would want is a remove method, so we can remove data from our database. To do so, we would first want to search for the item that we want to remove. So we would write a for loop for that. For var I equals to 0, I is less than this dot data dot length I plus plus. Now we want to put an if condition to see if the item matches what we want, this dot data I. Then we would want to splice the array right there, this dot data dot splice, starting from the I, and just take out one item and then break the for loop. Then after the for loop, we would want to store the new data back into our database. So let new data equals json.stringify this dot data, this dot storage dot set to do storage, and then new data. Once we're done deleting, we would also want to return the array back to whoever wanted to delete this item, this dot get data, which would just return the promise back to the caller. Now let's learn how to use the new service that we have created. In order to do so, let's navigate to the home.js directory, and we would first want to import the service into here. So to do so, we would say import to do service, which is the name of the component, from the path, which is data/service. We would also want to inject the to-do service into our constructor. So let's do that. Service to-do service, and then instantiate it inside the constructor. This dot service is equals to service. Now, as soon as our app loads up, we would want to load whatever to-dos the user had previously created and display them. To do so, what we will do is to call the get method from our service, which is the get data method we had created. Get data, which returns a promise. So we can say get data to do's and say this dot items is equals to json.parse to do's. Or if nothing came back, we would want to instantiate it as a brand new array. Now we would also want to remove whatever was inside the delete item method, because now we have to rewrite it. So let's rewrite that method. In order to delete an item, we would want to call the service, this dot service dot remove the item that we want to remove, dot then, because it's returning a promise again. So we would just copy everything which we just wrote on the top in the constructor. So let's copy that. Okay, there you go. Next, we will go to the add-items.js and also import the to-do service the same way that we used it in home.js. So add this line, import to-do service from data service add it to your constructor, and then instantiate it as this dot service equals to service inside your constructor. Now after that, all we would need to change here is to save the data on the database after we have added the item to the items array. So right under this .navparams.data, you would add this line, this dot service dot save, and then pass in the item that you want to save, which is this dot created item. Okay, now we've got the save method completed. There is just one more step remaining. Now navigate to the app.js file, and now we would want to import the to-do service here so we can pass it along the whole application. Now let's use the same technique that we have used to import before. Import to-do service from, but this time the path is different because we are navigating from the app.js file. So the path should be /pages/data/service. The next thing that we would want to do is to add the service as a provider. What this means is that we are telling the Ionic app that we would want to use a to-do service in any JavaScript file as a service provider. So let's do provider with an S, to-do service, and just a comma. So now let's try to serve up the app and see what we've got. Okay, now let's try to add a task. This is a task. Save it. Let's try to add another task. This is another task. Save it. Now let's refresh our app and see if it persists the data. Now as you can see that the data is still there. Hence our SQL storage method is working. Now if you want to see how the SQL storage looks like, you will want to do inspect element, navigate to resources, and look here which says web SQL. Now this is the database that we had created, and this is the key value pair, to-do storage and a JSON string which has all the tasks inside it. That will be all for this tutorial.